Button.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. My name is Yolanis.
And I'm Shakira, also known as Cinnamon, and today we got a special guest for you guys.
Today we'll be interviewing Molly Keegan.
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
She will be sharing her testimony.
Yes, but before we start this show, you know what you have to do.
Guys, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes.
And don't forget to hit that post notification bell because you need to know when we upload. So, without further ado, we're going to let her
talking.
begin.
Yes, so Molly, would you share your testimony for everyone, please?
Sure, it's quite a long one. It's a very filled life, as I would say. I grew up in Chicopee. Well, I was born and raised in Holyoke. I grew up there when I was really young and then moved to Chicopee when I was like 5, when my mom and my stepdad got together. My grandmother ended up getting sick of Lou Gehrig's disease when I was 11. And passing away like shortly after that. Our house also caught fire like a year to 6 months before she passed away. And it like burned down, like we were homeless. So that was a different experience to go through. My mom was an alcoholic. So she was a functioning alcoholic. She worked a paralegal job and, took care of us and, did everything she had to do. She just self-medicated with alcohol. And I think that almost walking in her shoes right now. I mean, obviously it's not exactly the same, but I'm also a single mom. She was a single mom. And it can be overwhelming sometimes. You just feel like you don't have enough to do it all. So I definitely have so much more compassion and understanding for her. Every day. Every day grows, especially with COVID. My son has no patience and neither do I. So I have a 4-year-old son named Liam.
Oh, he's beautiful.
He's amazing. I surrendered my life and his life to God as soon as I found out I was pregnant, and I got baptized with him in my stomach. So you're like double baptized in there. Because I just was terrified. I was recovering heroin addict. I definitely have chronic health issues. I have something called fibromyalgia, endometriosis, and interstitial cystitis. So sure, some people watching this will have one of those or know somebody who has one of those. And one of them alone is difficult. So 3 of them together, lots of chronic pain, tiredness, that kind of thing. So for the past 10 years, I've been trying anything and everything to manage the pain and just kind of like function, not have to avoid things. It definitely limits my life, the amount of pain that I'm in and what I can get done. So especially with COVID, it's been a big change going from like before I was working and then I had surgery and I couldn't work after that, and then he had daycare 9 to 5, so he's used to all the routine and getting all that structure. I have OCD and ADD, so it's kind of like perfect storm, if you will. It's like has its ups and downs. It's a lot. Like OCD is an anxiety disorder, so I have the way that I think is kind of anxious and fast. I kind of process things real fast, and then I go back and like look back at the details because I have like a photographic memory.
Me too.
Okay, so I'm like, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because I have a photographic memory. It's like it's a good and bad thing.
It's definitely a gift once you learn how to harness it. So back to like my childhood, my mom was an alcoholic. My stepdad has OCD too, so he struggled with his own, boundaries and cleaning and stuff like that, and never, I was my mom's child, not necessarily his, so he's getting used to a whole new life when he was dating my mom. They were together for a while. They ended up getting married, and they would just fight a lot because she was an alcoholic, and they just kind of didn't get along for a while. And I don't know how much of it was due to the alcoholism or if just maybe they weren't meant to be together, but I went through a lot with their whole divorce. It was kind of crazy, with my mom being an alcoholic. She, I don't know, I don't want to say made some mistakes, but she made some choices that were hurtful to other people. And the divorce was big and messy and crazy and like everybody involved and like just not good. So I was, I don't know, I want to say maybe 13. I was like 15. And I was already partying. I started drinking and smoking when I was like maybe 12, 13, like really young. Wow. Stole my mom's cigarettes, stole her vodka, and just partied ever since then. And it was a lot easier to kind of feel comfortable in my own skin because like growing up with Steve with OCD, you want things done a certain way. And me having OCD, I had no idea that I had OCD, ADD, or any of the health issues. I just had no clue. I thought everybody was like that. So it was hard for him because I had a really hard time with structure and routine and like time management, especially. Oh my gosh, like, so it would be aggravating, and he would yell at me a lot and just be frustrated with me. So I kind of took on like subconsciously, like, you know, you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not good enough, you need to do more, go faster, like, and with that thought or emotion with ADD, it's like the more that you try, the less your brain works correctly. So it just created a lot of anxiety, and I don't know if I had already had OCD or maybe I developed it from like the trauma, everything that I went through. But I have definitely struggled with PTSD on and off for my whole life because I've seen so much trauma. And it just kind of been got used to being around like chaos, you know. It's just kind of you know, kids running around, the parents are partying and listening to music, and I mean, it was a great childhood. That's what I thought. Like, I look back and I didn't think anything was wrong with it. I, you know, was well taken care of. I had food. I had people that loved me, and I just didn't know that I had the issues that I did. And I, like, back then, people didn't really own their issues and want to like talk about it and go to therapy and like work on stuff and know even that the brain is plastic and you can change. So, yeah, I developed like disassociation, where like when things would be too overwhelming, I would just like disassociate and go off and like think about something else in my head while I'm like trying to listen to somebody or whatever. So that is a task that I still master. Like, I have to keep focusing on learning how to focus. I think
we sure do.
Yeah, the one thing that's got me through that was focusing on God. Got me through everything. Like, so
wow,
that's like the childhood part. I'm trying to remember everything. Like, you know, our house got raided. That was kind of traumatic as a kid because you don't know what's going on and everybody's freaking out. And then, you know, seeing him go to jail. I think I could see my mom get arrested. And, you know, this is all their business. So I'm not saying it in a way where I'm judging or that I'm messed up because of them or anything like that. I'm just explaining where I came from and how I developed the way that I did. And it was always a challenge for me, like getting ready routines, all kind of stuff that normal people just did like really fast. I like overthinked it all. So the drugs, the alcohol really like relaxed me. Everybody would always be like, relax, slow down. That's what everybody tells me now too. So it did, like, and I loved it. Obviously I didn't have to feel uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt like it was having fun. All my friends were partying. Everybody would smoke and drink, and then they started doing Percocets, and they started doing cocaine and Molly and just like all the different drugs, and all my friends were doing it, and acid and all that. So I've had my fair share of fun, and I learned a lot. I think the acid particularly like changed my mind so differently, and that's a lot of the wires in your brain can get crossed where they're not usually, and I think that has something to do with why my brain is the way that it is today, and also the way that I saw the world. Like that day it was like I could see it was all God's glory, like it was all him and everything was beautiful. So I wouldn't say I would take back my life because it led me to where I was, and I'm glad it didn't happen when I was older and had a child and that kind of thing. So, I lived in Newport. I lived there for the summer. I moved there and started working, and my mom got cancer, lung cancer. And she also had an autoimmune disorder called CREST syndrome. So, that was the first time I like moved away from home. My brother and sister were in high school, and my mom's cancer was like, controlled. It wasn't moving. It's incurable, inoperable, but it wasn't moving. So having all those diagnoses and then like thinking about like, oh my God, like she's gonna die, like when is she gonna die, like what do we do with this time? It just created more anxiety and trauma. And I was in Newport, so I couldn't just walk home or something. I was a couple hours away. I had a job. I had to fulfill my responsibilities, but she's actually the one who made me go. She wanted me to go so bad. So I went for her, and I came home after the season was over and the cancer, then when we found it was moving again, and just spend time with her. Like, I was already doing heroin then and pills and coke, everything still. I was on Suboxone for a little while, which is like a maintenance therapy drug that can get you off of heroin or opiates, whatever. If you're addicted to them, you can do a detoxing process too. It's a lot easier, and you're not in as much pain or having as much withdrawal symptoms. Some people choose to stay on that. I chose to stay on it for 4 years. It did help prepare my brain, and it helped with the pain because I'm in chronic pain. So I had a revelation after watching a Corey Russell sermon. I think it was Psalm 91, and it was just so like earth-shatteringly moving that I was like, oh my God, I don't need this. I don't want to depend on anything but God. I'm going to be able to do this with his help. And I had a friend that called me maybe a year or so before that, and she was like, I'm in a bad spot. I think I'm gonna kill myself. Like I'm hiding in a closet in this guy's house, and his like wife's gonna come home, and I just don't want to live anymore. Like I'm an alcoholic. I've been doing drugs. Like I don't know what to do. Can you pray for me? And I was like, girl, I'm coming to get you. I'm coming to pick you up. But yeah, we'll pray on the way. And I picked her up that day, and we did like the Lord's Prayer, and I had my sponsor. I called my sponsor, and my first. Like I had two sponsors. The first one I ended up transitioning to somebody different so that my mother-in-law could actually start working with her. So that was a miracle in and of itself because we all need healing. And we were going through so much at the time. So I gotta get back to where I was. So when I came home from Newport, I was hooked on heroin and was trying to do the Suboxone and then would try and do heroin once in a while, and then I just ended up, I think, getting kicked off of the clinic. I was with a drug dealer, so I didn't have to worry about it. And yeah, he was older than me, and just crazy looking back, like how different your decisions are, or the way that you look at things. But in my mind, it was like that's the only way I could survive, I think, is what it came down to. So staying with him was an abusive relationship. We were doing a lot of drugs together. So, sometimes we would fight and end up he ended up choking me before and like punching me and all that kind of stuff. And I think that was the day that I left and I just never saw him again. But that was traumatic, like fighting for my life, not knowing if I was going to get through it. Like, am I meant to die right now so I don't have to live in this misery of addiction every day? Like, it's crazy. So, yeah, I finally, when I went back with him, I came back to the house, my aunt's house. My aunt and uncle took my mom and I in when she got sick so that we could all be together, have that time. We had hospice set up her bed there in what used to be my little cousin's playroom. And that was just such the biggest blessing in my life because I wouldn't have had that time with her. I would have been out on the streets. I would have been doing drugs. I would have overdosed. I'd have overdosed like 5 times, I think, and revived every time. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, God.
Yeah, one time was in a hospital. I had a infection because I found out that I had a needle in my arm, a piece of needle, and I had no idea. I must have fell asleep after doing drugs, and it just was in there. It created a huge infection. So I was in there, and I was still addicted to drugs. So I had a drug dealer. That guy I was dating come bring me heroin.
Who actually supplied it? Huh?
Yeah, well, I asked for it. I own it. That he was a heroin dealer. What could I expect? And I was in a lot of pain and I didn't care. So yeah, I had him bring me the drugs. I shot up in the bathroom and I overdosed, and the door was locked. They couldn't get open, so they had to call, a crash car and Narcan me and all that. I had a suicide person with me after that, like 24 hours a day, just to make sure like I was good. And I was so pissed because I wanted to smoke a cigarette in the shower so bad. I used to smoke. I quit smoking.
Praise God.
I used to smoke for 10 years. My mom died of lung cancer, so I had to find a way to do it. But really, it was God. It was Liam. Like when I got pregnant, that's when I was stopped messing around. That was it. Like never again. God completely took the desire and the obsession away to use, and it was just a miracle. He was my miracle. He saved my life. So yeah. Fast forward after my mom passed away. Well, actually backwards. Sorry, I had a different boyfriend who was a drug smuggler and dealer and used it like a user, whatever. I didn't mean to say that, but and I was with him. I fell in love with him. That was like I think the first time I really fell in love with a man. And we were having so much fun. Like he would take me all around and travel, like to the Poconos and like the little resort and sorry, no, you're good. You're good. New York, Pennsylvania, just like all over. And he treated me so good. Like it was just amazing. We had the most fun ever. We were very like kindred spirits, very alike, and bopping around and just funny and sarcastic. And so yeah, I was madly in love with him, but I was also didn't know I was codependent. So I became codependent on him and the relationship, and then also the drugs as well. And like if I wasn't working, he was the one supplying the drugs. So it was like another way that I needed to survive. And you don't think about it like that, but I was really madly in love with him. And one night, him and I were doing drugs together, and we did the same amount, 5 bags of heroin each. We both shot it, and I was fine. He overdosed, and he was blue in front of me. Nobody else knew we were doing drugs in the house. So I had to like do CPR, and then I tried to call everybody for help, and I even tried like calling outside, like somebody call 911, and it was in Hartford in like a bad area, and not one person like said okay, or nobody called. So yeah, I went to school to be an EMT. I got my certification. I think it was because my mom was stubborn, and I wanted to make sure I knew what to do if something happened to her. And the trauma of that job was just not, I think that's maybe why I was drawn to it, but it's just not for me. So I never ended up working the job, but I had the experience. So I started doing CPR on him, and it wasn't working. And then I grabbed everybody. I was like, you know, we get in the shower, we put him in the shower. Like he was still blue and dead. And I ended up just keep doing CPR and doing it. By the grace of God, he came back to life. Like thank God he came back to life. But he left that day. My best friend who hooked me up with him ended up picking him up, and I really didn't see him or talk to him much after that. I think I might have saw him once. He ended up dying. So he died about 2 or 3 years ago now. And it was not drugs. It was an infection that he had in his toe, and he just never went to the doctors, probably because of the drugs. But he was 33. My son's father just passed away. He was also 33. He had like a major heart attack and blew out like all of his heart. Basically, he had like 12% of function left, and they discharged him from the hospital, and they couldn't control his blood pressure, and just I don't think it was safe to let him go. And he ended up leaving the hospital that Friday. He had his first real doctor's appointment with a heart cardiologist, because he was having heart problems. He never went. His mom was going with him. He just didn't show up, and kind of stood her up and never showed up. And I believe it was that Sunday that we had all been in touch with him and making sure he was okay, because after the heart attack, you never know. And nobody had heard from him all day or all night. I was the last person to hear from him. He had texted me like, how is your guys' night doing, Liam and I? And I answered him, and I never got a response. But so his mom was like, I need to go check on him and make sure he's okay, because he hasn't been answering. Nobody's heard from him. I just, I want to make sure he's okay. And I was like, yeah, he's probably sleeping. Like, I didn't really think about it. Like, I didn't expect it to be anything bad. And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh my God, yeah. She got there, his car was there, his everything was there, and his phone was in his apartment ringing, and she could hear it ringing, but he wasn't answering. So she had to call 911 and our family friend, and thank God they wouldn't let them in there first, because they obviously were the ones to find him. So this just happened maybe 2 weeks ago. But about 8 months ago, Liam's grandfather passed away, and he was like his best buddy. Like, he was with him all the time, all the time. He was so good to him. They spent so much time together. And the day I met Peter, he actually said, yeah, I don't think we're ever going to have grandchildren, like this one is this one, this one, and whatever. And I was like, you don't know that. You have no idea. Like, somebody could be pregnant tomorrow, one of their girlfriends or whatever. He's just like, no, I'm not going to live to see it. And I was like, don't say that. Like, you are. I had to affirm, speak life to him. Like, yes, you are. Don't predict that as your future, because you'll believe it. So, God happened to use me to bring the grandchild, and I was just like, my mind blown, So, I met my son's father in high school, and he used to throw parties at this house in the backyard, beer pong, everything like that, loud music, because they used to go camping in Vermont. So now I go camping in Vermont with them sometimes, instead of the house parties. How I met Nick, him throwing them in the backyard. So it's funny that I live here in this house now. God, I would have graduated in 2009, so very long time. But God had his reasons. There was many reasons, and I've been very patient in trying to learn, growing my communication skills, my relationship skills, my parenting skills. So he was sick with congestive heart failure, chronic kidney failure, diabetes, and gout for a while, and had a couple heart attacks. He had one in Florida last year that I just rallied around everybody that I could think of to just pray for him, because they're like, there's nothing else we can do for you. Like, that's the worst. I've heard that so many times from a doctor, and it can be so damaging if you don't know how to attach from it, or detach from it. So I think he had that in his head, oh, there's nothing I can do there. I'm just going to die. And he was just kind of waiting, almost expecting it. And I think we get caught up in life when people are sick. We're so scared of them losing them that we're not able to enjoy the time we have with them. Yeah. So that would be one of my biggest messages, prioritize the people in your life that you care about, because you never know. You really never know. My mom died at 45, and then my grandmother had Lou Gehrig's disease or muscular dystrophy, and she died at 52. It's like when you slowly lose the use of your muscles down to your eyes and down to your breathing, and so she was kind of trapped in her body. I think seeing that as a young child obviously was like mind boggling, like gut wrenching. So you really learn to value every second that you get. You really do with those kind of things. Like God uses that in so many ways, and I've met so many people that have gone through what I've gone through, and I was able to be there for them and support them and let them know, like, it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. Like, this is what helped me. I'm not trying to preach at you, but I did this and this. And sometimes you just got to allow yourself to not be okay and just feel that and kind of explore it with yourself.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Pop is Liam's grandpa. He had a heart attack in the house. Liam was there. We were all there. Don called me in the room, and same thing. It just like automatically brought me back to my ex overdosing and having to revive him, because he was like blue and he was just making like like noises. He wasn't breathing. He had no pulse. Like, it was crazy. So we were trying to get him back, and like I was trying to like figure out what to do with Liam. I was on the phone with 911. I was trying to text the boys, and then I was like trying to tell Don what to do for the CPR, and it was just insanity. So Liam witnessing that, me witnessing Liam witness that, is one of the most traumatic things that I've been through, because I was so helpless. Like, there was nothing I could do, and it's just the same thing now. It's already happened. It's unfortunately going to be a part of his story, but I think it obviously will make him resilient. You see him, he's doing pretty well for himself.
Very well.
We'll put a video up.
We sure will.
He's
wild. We sure will. That's your miracle child.
He's my beautiful chaos. That's what I call it.
Okay, whenever you're ready, I'm gonna put it right now. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
When you're mad like this, just calm down and talk like that.
Hey, I love it.
Because it's so much like putting out fires, and I'm trying to learn how to deal with my own mental health issues and teach him how to deal with his at the same time while I'm learning it. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it's almost like I'm getting my childhood back, and I get to learn how to play and like have adventures with him, and like not be the mean cranky mom, because it's so easy to get there when you have to be the disciplinary one. Like, I'm the only one. So yeah, so after Peter died, I think that Liam's behavior started to get a little harder and more challenging. And then when his dad died, I think it just, at 4, I couldn't imagine. So, we're in home therapy 3 times a week. He has a therapeutic mentor every week. I do therapy twice a week. Like, we definitely are doing what we need to do to grieve, but it's still not easy. It's never going to be perfect. But I think the most important thing is to check on the ones around you and see how they're doing, instead of assuming like, maybe they are self-medicating, or they're isolating, or they're doing something unhealthy to deal with it, because they really just need to talk to somebody. So it's nice just to be a listening ear and not expect anything from anybody. I think people really value that when you are willing to give them your time, because it's something we're not allotted a lot of, and you have no idea how much you have, and you don't get it back. So,
and dealing with this pandemic haven't really helped.
Girl.
Like, you have the social distance, but God has been through it all. Like, God has literally been here,
covered by the blood.
Literally.
So I look at it like,
talk to him. Like, I understand that, because I'm a hugger. I'm a fan.
Same. So is Liam. He's hugging the grocery store people, telling him, "I love you. Come over. Come over house."
And it's like, cannot do that. Made people feel some type of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, only person you could call on was God to let him know how you was feeling. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
But continue.
Yeah, no, that's honestly one of the biggest things that I've learned, that you have to own your own behavior in your life. Like, you're in control of it. You might not feel like you are, but there are things you have control over. And if you're not monitoring that and taking care of yourself, I think it's a death sentence. You're living in misery, and you're carrying around like anxiety and anger and everything like all the time. You just don't process it, especially the same thing with trauma. If you don't process it, you're getting triggered as that little girl or that little boy or that teenager or whatever, and then you react out of that. That trigger, out of that response, is not a response, it's a reaction. So I'm trying really hard to learn how to do that with my son, not be so triggered and not react. And it's really what I have to do, is like literally learn how to not react to anything. And he has done some things. So I'm definitely working on it. the therapy and all that really helps, like understanding cognitively, like where he's at and where I'm at and how these things are affecting us and like what we can do, because I'm a fixer, like with the codependency. I tend to like, in my mind, like I'm always like thinking, I'm like, oh, I could make this better or do this, or like, you know, I like to innovate and personal growth and development and all that kind of stuff. I love learning about entrepreneurship and money and business, and I think when I got off drugs, I got addicted to learning and growing, because I realized that the brain is plastic. It is changeable. Like you can change, even after 40 years, you can change your habits. You can change the way that you look at people and react to people. And learning that has empowered me so much, like not being able to say like, well, you made me angry. It's like, no, I allowed myself to get angry because of whatever it was that you were doing. The way that my perspective processed it could have triggered something that made me angry, but that person didn't make me angry. I am responsible for my response and reaction, and if I react out of trauma, then I have to apologize. And that's sometimes the hardest thing, is to own, like, I'm so sorry, like I did not mean to hurt you or you know, misunderstand you or whatever. Like communication is big, so I think that's the biggest one that I try and focus on, especially with Liam, because I talk to him like he's 27, and I don't know how to talk to a kid. Like I just studying Mr. Rogers, and I'm really trying to learn how to parent and raise myself. They're kind of the same exact thing. Like you have to raise yourself in order to model for what you're telling them to do. They need to see it in you, and if you're not seeing it or it doesn't match up, then it's damaging to them. So yeah, I know God put me in this family for a reason. The day that Nick messaged me, since I hadn't spoken to him since high school, he was just getting out of detox, and my mom had just died, and it was right after my ex-boyfriend had overdosed, and it felt like he abandoned me. It was like abandonment issues. I don't have a dad. My dad he lives in Ireland. He chose just not to be a father. He just chose not to be. He didn't, he signed away his rights at 3 months old, and that was the only time he's ever seen me. So that was a first kind of like trigger for me with abandonment. And then the stepdad treating me the way that he did unintentionally. He didn't mean to treat me that way, or he didn't intend for me to take it as like I'm not good enough, like I need to work harder, I need to do more, I need to whatever you'd say, smarten up, use your brain. Like I would really feel incompetent. And even when it comes to like instruments, like I have to be confident going into it, or it's like I'm worried about it, and that's not what it's for. It's like a beautiful art for me. It's very expressionally healing. And I heard God say to me in meditation one day, like you were created to ignite a spirit and an atmosphere of worship and praise, and like with music and singing, and just reminding people, like, if I can get through being a heroin addict with chronic pain for 10 years and not relapsing, the only dad I ever got was my son's father's father, like my son's grandpa. And I had that great relationship, and we got along so good, and we were so alike. And then he passes away and dies. So it's like another abandonment thing, that got triggered. And if I can get through all that, the deaths, like my ex-boyfriend dying and my mom dying and my grandmother dying, and then Peter died, and then Liam's uncle died, and then Liam's other grandpa died, and then his father died, and he's taking it out on us, which is expected. So that part has been challenging, like no daycare or daycare closed forever after COVID. And I hadn't been working since January. I had a surgery that I had, and ended up post-surgical complications. Like I was trying to go on vacation to Florida like we do every year, but because of my medical issues, I have a lot of pain, and I have a lot of like the bladder thing, I have to pee all the time. So it's like driving, it's really annoying. You got to stop every 10 minutes. And just the pain of the amusement parks, like the joint pain that I get, it's just a lot to take on. So I had my bladder stretched to help with the symptoms, because I had already done before. It's like, it sounds terrible. It is a surgery, but they just fill your bladder up with water, stretch it as much as they can, and then let it go back down. And then I think they do it one more time after that. But the first one wasn't bad. It was quick and easy. I did take the pain medicine. I'm like come to a point where I'm comfortable with taking it. Like I went from like very rigid, like would never take anything ever again, then to like my therapists and mental health providers, like, you have chemical imbalances, you might have to take medication, might need them for the rest of your life, might not, but you should try it and see if it helps you, basically. It took me a long time to do that, because recovery is kind of like abstinence usually is what they teach. But it's different when you have chronic pain, and I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it like, oh, I would be relapsing if I took pain medicine even when I was in pain. So I would feel guilt and shame when I took it. I still do sometimes. And I'm just like, this is not of God. This is not, like, I get it now. But I had to process through it for a long time and make sure I was ready. And so I took the pain pills for like the first 2 or 3 days after the surgery, and then I was fine. And I just laid on the couch for like a week. So I figured I'd be laying in the car, laying down in the van or whatever, or just sitting. My doctors didn't tell me that sitting for a long period of time it can create a flare up with your bladder or endometriosis. That's a uterus disease. If you're really interested, you can go look it up. That's all I'm gonna say though. And I drove to Florida, like we were driving for like 3 days, and I was on the pain pills, so I didn't know. And we get there, and then I go to the amusement park with my son because we were taking him for his birthday, his 4th birthday, and it's like, I have to go. I can't not go. I have to take him, and I really just wanted him to enjoy himself, and I wanted to be able to be normal and keep up with everybody and not ruin everybody's vacation. So that's actually exactly what I did, because I went to the amusement park, and then I felt the pain of like moving around on the rides and stuff like that. Oh girl, it was bad. And then I was in that terrible, like chronic, acute pain for weeks. It was 3 weeks, because I called my doctor and they're like, it could just be post-surgical stuff. So just wait a couple weeks, and then if not, go to the ER. And then after 3 weeks, I was like, is it okay if I go now? Like I can't do it anymore. Like I literally didn't want to live anymore. It was so bad. So I ended up going to the emergency room down there, and they treated me great. They took great care of me. They gave me like this cocktail that they do for flare-ups with IC, the bladder stuff, and I started to feel better and get better every day. And then we drove home again, and it kind of happened again.
Came back again.
Then I went to the Holyoke ER, Holyoke Hospital ER, when I got back, and the treatment was so bad that the actual hospital called me back a day later to encourage me to file a complaint because of the way that I was treated.
Wow.
I was treated just very discriminated towards because of with that needle accident thing. I think I went to Holyoke. I think that's where it was. So I think they might have had that in my records, and I can tell right away when a provider can see that, because they treat me completely differently. It's really sad, because I've worked really hard, and it kind of like that triggered me going back to like when it all started, like, oh my God, they're not going to treat the pain. I'm going to be stuck in pain like this forever. Like, what am I going to do? So, I just worked through it all with God, and I did end up filing a complaint. I said I didn't want to get anybody in trouble, but you don't understand that's such a risk to turn somebody away. I went in for anti-inflammatories. Like there's this IV anti-inflammatory called Toradol that works really well for the inflammation pain that I have. So they usually do in Florida, they mixed the Toradol, and then they did Dilaudid, and then they did a bladder spasm medication, and then a Pyridium, which is like, it's another over-the-counter pill you can take for bladder pain and UTIs or bladder infections, that kind of thing. In Holyoke, they denied me the Pyridium, the over-the-counter one, and I hadn't been working for weeks because I had the surgery, and then I went to Florida, so I didn't have money. I couldn't afford to just go and buy whatever prescriptions or whatever, and it's free when you get it prescribed to you. So I wasn't going to tell them that, though. I was mortified. I was going to be like, well, I can't afford it. I know that you can give it to me because I've gotten in the hospital in Florida. So they denied me that. They denied me any real pain medication. They've denied me the anti-inflammatory. They said they will only give it to me intramuscularly, which is, it hurts. It hurts more than like a shot. They literally shove it in your leg, and it burns. The medication burns. It burns when it's an IV, but imagine when in your leg. I had a bruise for like 3 days, and I refused, and I was like, I really don't want to do that. Like, it's going to cause more pain than I already have and more anxiety. Like, I have fibromyalgia. Please, like, can you just give me the pill, please? And they're like, oh, we don't have a pill. I'm like, I was prescribed these pills after my surgery. I asked for them first line to take instead of painkillers. And if they don't control the pain, then I won't take the painkillers. And they work really good. So I just was like astonished at the way that I was treated. She's like, no, you're intramuscular or nothing. So I was like, well, I literally waited for 8 hours. 8 hours. When I walked out of that emergency room, there was not one person in the waiting room. When I went there, it was filled. So I was basically the last. And I was having like severe stomach pains, like contraction, basically like almost like kidney stones. And yeah, they denied me the any of those medications. I didn't even ask for them. The only thing that I told them that usually works is the Toradol. So they did the intramuscular. It hurt so bad, and I was in more pain afterwards, and it just takes longer to work or whatever, I guess, and they didn't give me the whole dose. So the woman came back with my discharge papers before she even asked me how it was doing, if it worked, what my pain scale was, like nothing. She's like, no, here you go, this is it. And they almost didn't let me go unless I arranged a ride after getting the Toradol. Even though it's not a narcotic, it doesn't get you high. It's literally like it's like ibuprofen and steroids and prescription strength. So after that experience, I was literally like left in pain, and I had pain pills. I had oxycodone, I had morphine. I told them that these are my pain pills from the hospital and the surgery, so haven't taken them all. I'm here because I don't want to take them. I'd rather do it any other way, basically. So it was a little infuriating, but I learned to stand my ground. I learned to advocate for myself. I learned to let the doctors know that I'm educated. I know what's going on, and I know what I deserve. I know how I deserve to be treated as a patient, and I'm not going to settle for any less. It's been 10 years that I've been doing this. I just learned about a nerve block like this year, my pain management doctor. So after all this happened, I was like, God, I'm done. Like, I give up. I am done. I'm not trying anymore. I've been trying so hard. I don't care. I was like basically suicidal. I did not want to do life anymore. I was in so much pain. I was so upset because I couldn't do anything anymore. I couldn't play my instruments. I couldn't take care of my son. I couldn't cook. I couldn't do anything. And I was so depressed because of it, because I went from like so high functioning. Like, you knew when we met because we worked together. So I was a single mom. I was working at the 110 Grill. I was taking, like, I do these free lectures on OCD, so support groups. Then in my recovery meetings and sponsor meetings and violin lessons, piano lessons, like I did all that, and then getting Liam to daycare and home from daycare, and like just all the routine stuff. I was doing all of it. I was doing really well, but I had gotten off of all my medication because I was like, that was always my goal. And then as the flare-up started because of the stress of the holidays, the stress of my dad being sick. Then my dad died right before Christmas, and just all of it. So, you know, I've come to the conclusion, I understand that, like, yes, I need to function, basically. Like, I'd rather be on medication safely than not function and not have a life, really, at all. Not be thriving, not be taking care of my son, but being able to work. So I was so fed up. I'm like, God, I give up. I'm done. Like, you need to make a way now, or I'm done. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. Like, I cried my eyes out. I cried for hours after that emergency room. But I poured it out onto God, because I knew if I didn't, then I would be running to food. I would be running to alcohol. I would be running somewhere else where I'm not supposed to be running. Like, this God-sized void we all have inside of us, that hole can only be filled with God. So
only can be filled
with
God.
I got it all out. I gave it to him. I was like, wash my hands. I surrendered it all. I surrendered my life. I do that every morning with addiction. That's the first thing. I'm like, thank you for waking me up again. Yes, Lord, thank you. I surrendered my life, my child, my addiction, my communication, my relationships, all of it, for your will to be done, for good people to be blessed, basically. And
amen.
Yeah. So the next day, I got a call from Holyoke Pain Management, which is like, I waited like over a year to get in with a pain management specialist back when I was trying to get diagnosed, and they just wrote me off and they wouldn't treat me because they thought that I was just an addict. Nobody ever wanted to try and find the source of the pain, not the trauma, because I addressed that, but also the physical illness. So yeah, I got a call from them, and they're like, hey, we want to schedule for an appointment. We actually have an opening tomorrow. And I was like, am I on my life? Is this your life? Like, God, I love you. Like, and sometimes that's what you need to do. You need to cry out for what you think you need, and then be like, I know you know what I need, and I'm gonna wait for it. Especially like God telling me, like, oh, you're gonna be an instrument to ignite a spirit and an atmosphere of worship. Like, that sounds crazy. If I told most people that, they'd be like, okay, take your medicine today.
but he uses us.
He does. And I learned the song Reason to Believe. I can play it now on the piano, and I learned it from my mom, and music has really kept me going, like, in this dark season. Worship is completely separate from music, but I also, like, when I worship musically, it's like I literally cleanse myself, and I get like all my feelings and everything out, and I like in the presence of God instantly. I feel like it's weird. Like, it's just me. Maybe it's not just me.
It's not you, because it's not weird. I love to be in the presence of God.
Yeah, and once you're there, it's like you're in love with it. So I read a book.
The fullness of joy.
Yes, exactly. I read a book, Mindset, and realized that all you have to do is put the time and consistency in it. It's not like, some people are gifted, yes, but anybody can learn if you put the time in it. Like, I'm reading the book, Suzuki's book, and there's like these, there was like a girl who had polo, and they were just leaving her. They weren't going to do violin anymore, and they asked her to keep doing it, and she kept doing it. They said she would never have any function or anything again, and she learned how to play again.
Wow.
And it was because of her teacher encouraging her. She's like, no, I'm not going to be doing it. Everybody else was like, oh no, she's going to be like that forever. So don't ever let anybody dictate your own story, especially the one in your head. Like, you need to get quiet with yourself and try and see what yours are. Like, you know, mine used to be like, oh, I'm a victim because my mom died and I'm a heroin addict, and now I'm recovering. So it's a completely different story. It's a good story. And just how radically God changed me throughout the years, like continually seeking him. Like, in the morning I meditate, and I'm listening for him to talk. Like, I talk all the time to him. I do my praying, but it's important to listen and hear those things, because I know that was from God. I wouldn't have been able to do this music thing, picking up 2 instruments, one being the hardest one to learn. The violin is the hardest instrument to learn ever as an adult, but period. So it's been a journey, and I've been able to keep on doing it. And I think the music is powerful. I think that it's proven to change your chemistry, your brain chemistry, and your body chemistry. So if you're ever in a tough spot and you want to get out of it, put some music on, some kind of music, happy music, classical music, whatever. I think it's from God. Yeah, worship music, exactly. Yes, I didn't know about worship music until I moved to Florida. We went to Florida in the summer, and they have Hillsong churches there, and I heard the song Oceans, with the violin in it, and I was like, I fell in love with it, and I played it over and over and over and over and over again, and then I was actually able to see them in concert play it. Like, I wanted to go to the Color Festival. It's like Color Conference or whatever, and it was only in New York and LA, and the tickets for New York sold out after I bought my plane ticket, so I had to switch it to LA. I made it work, and I went by myself for the first time ever, and I went to that conference, and I got to hear them live, and it was life-changing. It really was. Like, you have to grow in your identity in Christ, because otherwise you're carrying around your identity that's made up of like what your parents said about you, what your friends said about you, what that ex-boyfriend said about you, what the ex-girlfriend thought about you. And if you don't ever get quiet with yourself, it's really uncomfortable as humans, like to sit still and to just not be able to move and just be okay with whatever thoughts come. It's very hard, but it grows your self-control. It grows your perspective, your ability to have insight and like look at things from a different angle. Instead of like going over like, I should have done this, I should have done that. Like, let it go, reprocess the memory in your brain. Like, next time I'm going to do that. That's what I should have done. Right. You're priming yourself for it. So, I think everybody should really learn a lot about mental health. Definitely when you have spirituality. A lot of people think, or in the church, think you're not supposed to struggle with those things. You're not supposed to fear, because the Bible says do not fear. Right. But we're human. We all have those emotions, and the more that we try and deny and repress them, the more that they're going to come up in different ways, and patterns are going to like continue. So I think it's really important to look back on your patterns in your life and learn how to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, even if it's just like being in a puddle in the ground in front of God and saying like, I hate my life right now. That's okay. And you got to be honest with him. And then you can, when you're doing it in the presence of God, you're like, I actually don't hate my life. I just hate what I'm going through right now. Or I'm like, I'm struggling. You see things differently. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's what changed my life, what saved my life, what's kept my sanity through COVID and having no daycare and, all of the things. Those are just like a couple of them.
Well, thank you, Molly. Thank you, Molly.
Beautiful story.
No problem. It's just a part of it, but I'm sure I'll be back.
You will. We definitely can have you back. We could do our part 2.
Yes.
But thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening and joining in.
God bless you.
And we were going to be leaving, but it's like I always say, be free, be true, be you. Yes.
So I am.
Bye.